into 80 urban regions, giving them equal rights, pay attention, and as much power as could be devolved onto them. Each urban region had its own legislative system, budget, electoral system, its strengths and weaknesses. The teacher continued his story, gesticulating wildly. Ugh, enough. This was the 7th time this semester he'd launched into this same topic. This was especially depressing when you realize that this was a construction mechanics class, not history. The guy obviously lived in the past, when things weren't as bad as they were now. I folded my hands and lowered my head, watching Stacy out of the corner of my eye. I was afraid to even walk up and say hi to her. She was the daughter of the head architect of the Novosibirsk urban region, and I was just a kid from a small town. I came to Novosibirsk from the neighboring UR to study. They had really good specialists here in architecture and construction who were highly esteemed the world over. So, that's how I came to find myself sitting there, thinking about the twists and turns of fate and staring longingly at the perfect back of the object of my desires. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my head. I groaned, grabbing my head by the temples. Tears gushed from my eyes. I never felt pain like this. It was horrible.
Rejoice, mortals. The dark sphere has arrived on your planet. The strong will survive and become stronger. The weak will die and turn to dust.
My head felt like it was splitting open. Everything in my field of vision was blurry. What the hell was a dark sphere? What the hell kind of nonsense just thundered through my brain? I heard a hysterical scream pierce the air, coming from the front of the hall. I raised my head quickly and tried to focus my vision. What I saw was horrifying. Right in front of us, our old dork of a teacher was gnawing on the face of one of the students. At first, I thought he'd just been overcome by passion, but the loud shrieks of horror and pain put paid to that idea pretty quickly. I looked around and saw that several of the students had thrown themselves on their deskmate and were now biting and scratching at them. I jumped up. Next to me sat a completely bewildered classmate, staring at the chaos that had suddenly erupted around him. I rushed forward, kicking one of the crazed students away as I did so. His whole mouth and chest were already covered with blood. I ran up to the second row, grabbed Stacy by the elbow, and yanked her into the walkway. She was staring in shock at one of her friends who just chewed open the neck of one of their other friends. "Let's go," I shouted at her and dragged her into the hall. She didn't object. She was still completely stupefied. Screams, shrieks, and wails filled the air in the classroom. Tearing open the door, I looked out into the hall. "Shit!" I swore, watching as another teacher, with dead eyes and a staggering gait, threw himself onto a guy from the neighboring classroom. A loud scream, filled with horror, rebounded down the hall. The guy shoved the zombie away, leaving a decent-sized piece of meat from his own arm lodged in the zombie's mouth. "Retreat!" I ran back into the auditorium to find that the surviving students had quickly started to pull the desks together and make a primitive barricade. Oleg was directing them as he swung a chair at a zombie who was trying to crawl across the barricades. Kicking one of my zombie classmates in the chest, I noticed the pointer that was standing next to the board. I ran over, jumped up onto the small platform by the board, and grabbed the pointer. In my head, I thanked our teacher profusely for sticking with his old-fashioned wooden pointer instead of using a laser pointer like the other teachers did. True, the thanks meant very little in practice, since as soon as I turned around, I found that same teacher lumbering toward us. He was running quickly, but somehow funnily, shuffling his legs and holding his arms outstretched in front of him. His dead eyes stared blankly at us. There was no trace of reason left in them. Stacy finally found her voice. "Shh," I hissed at her. She suddenly went quiet, staring at me, still dazed. But it was too late. 4 zombies had already turned their heads toward her and were now racing toward us. Seeing what had happened, Stacy covered her mouth with her palms. Tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her start to cry. "Don't worry. Just stay back and don't scream," I said, trying to look as confident as I could. Having made it to the platform on which we were standing, our late teacher bumped against it and fell, head crunching against the